This conference will now be recorded.
Not yet addressed.
And I just came in case it's helpful to inform the letter, but
Okay.
I don't need to be here, so that's all.
Alright, we gotta call the meeting to order.
Yeah.
And then we'll deal with that.
Yeah.
So we'll call to order this August 31st, 2022 meeting of the Monterey Select Board. And we would like to welcome Scott Jensen back to the Select Board, back in the Select Board. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome back, Scott.
I'm thankful that the people of Monterey thought that I'd be able to help out, and I feel that I can. I had 9 years of budget work behind me, and knowing that the current board is still new with the overall fiscal workings, I just felt that somebody needed to step up. And I also wanted to say that I think it's reprehensible of the actions of the past board. Just the way they treated each other, and treated other members of the town. Very disappointing that I have to sit here and become the person that should have been here all along. So I just wanted to clear that. Other than that, thanks.
Alright,
Let's see what we can do.
and we'll just mark our presence, so Justin Maycook is present in Town Hall.
Susan Cooper, President of Town Hall.
Scott Jensen.
And Donna, thank you for joining us. I'm gonna quickly speak to the chair of the Parks Commission, because he's in. We have not put the ball field renovation on the agenda for this evening,
That's fine.
because we just got it
Yes.
after we posted the agenda, so maybe next week.
Yeah.
If you're around, we'll touch base.
Okay.
Alright, thank you.
Yeah.
And, the first order of business is calling an executive session, and I will make a formal motion. I move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy in preparations for negotiations with the town clerk, to invite town council Donna Brewer to participate, and to return to open session after the executive session.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on the motion? We'll call a vote and roll call, so Susan votes.
Yes.
Scott,
I'm gonna abstain.
Scott's abstaining, and Justin will vote yes, and so the motion carries and we'll enter into executive session. So,
You want me out?
yes,
Please. Not a problem.
we'll be back in by 6 PM at the latest, I believe.
Sounds good.
But if you're waiting, we can come grab you when you're.
That's fine. I'll make myself invisible.
I don't think so. Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we have returned to open session at 6:27 PM. And we will, I wanna begin by noting that our 7 PM interview with Laurie McArthur for the select board secretary position has been postponed. She emailed me today and she's not able to make it. So we're rescheduling for next week, so that's taken care of. We will jump right into old business, with the first item of old business being the town charter committee status. To update Scott, and also Susan. So we voted at town meeting last year for the select board to start a town charter committee to look into whether or not the town should have a town charter. Back in November of last year, October, November, we advertised if anyone was interested. We appointed 4 people through November 3rd, 2022. We talked about adding more people, there was more interested, and we decided to drop it while the investigation was ongoing. Susan and I picked this back up a month or two ago, and I reached back out to everybody who was, who had shown interest or was already appointed. Out of everyone who had shown interest or who was already appointed, the only people who I heard back from and expressed interest in still being on the town charter committee are Hillel Maximon, Janet Maximon, and Sean Tryon. Given the lack of interest in the town charter committee's goals, I would move that we let our 4 current appointments expire on November 3rd and make no new appointments to the committee and not continue looking for people to serve on the town charter committee at the moment.
Second that.
Any other discussion or public comment? There being none, I'll call a vote. Susan,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
and Justin, yes. So the select board will let the 4 current appointments to the committee expire on November 3rd, and will make no new appointments to the town charter committee for the time being. The second item of old business is the Scanlon Associates audit of the town's fiscal year 21 financials. And we signed the engagement letter last meeting a couple weeks ago, and now we have the representative letter, the management letter.
Yeah, and I actually did misunderstood him, so that's actually was something that's signed by the town accountant, which she has already done, so you just need to accept the revise. He did revise the management letter to include the questions that you guys had, and to note from what the accountant and I had let him know, we've already addressed certain concerns that he had noted. So you really just need to accept it and let me know if you want him to come in and discuss, or if you're, okay.
I didn't find anything that was worrisome.
No, so we got a couple of questions answered about bank transfers and the low risk auditee we had questions about.
Right.
So there's a couple things that we are clearing up.
The third question. Do you remember what the third question was?
The policies.
Right.
And he said that the ones that we're working on are the ones, so there's only one chapter left to do, and that's capital planning.
Right, which we're on, okay. Was that a capital planning policy or just a capital that we have one?
Policy and procedure, there's a
Policies and procedures, okay.
So I would move that the board accepts the audit of the town's fiscal year 21 financials by Scanlon Associates.
Second?
Is there any further discussion or public comment? We'll call a vote. Susan,
Yes.
Scott,
Sure, having very little input on it, but yes.
okay, and Justin,
It
yes.
seems like the few things I've read seem like they're all in compliance.
And the motion carries and the town has accepted the audit. The third item of old business is purchasing an electronic voting system for town meeting. So just to, Scott, just to catch you up, the town meeting voted for $5,000 for an electronic voting system for town meeting. We've done some research on what companies offer the platform. There's, the 2 main options are Meridia and Turning. And I talked to the moderator from New Marlboro, Barry Shapiro, and New Marlboro is going with Meridia, and we could potentially share systems with them. Right here is just an email of, and we've done our own research on the 2 systems as well. But we're just trying to pick a brand of clickers to use. We have the monies already.
Where does that money, how was that appropriated?
It was out of free cash, it was a special article.
Okay,
Do
do you remember what that line was?
5,000.
Okay. How much or which line item?
No, not the line item.
Okay.
just
Right,
price.
5,000.
Yeah,
And so obviously, if there were continuing expenses, like a software expense, that would end up in the operating budget. But as of right now, we don't, this was a special article because if we buy, and there was a choice between renting and buying, but if we buy, it's a one-time expense other than
Updating software.
and updating software and stuff like that. But one reason that Barry mentioned they picked Meridia in New Marlboro is that there's no annual license fee as there is with Turning. So I would move that the board go forward with purchasing Meridia electronic voting system on the basis that it is preferred to turning technologies and that we could potentially share clickers with the town of New Marlboro.
Second.
Great. I thought someone was trying to participate remotely. Is there any other discussion or comment on the electronic voting system going with Meridia? Okay, there being none, I'll call a vote. Susan?
I'll go with it, yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Scott, yes, and Justin, yes, so the motion carries and the town will go with Meridia electronic voting system.
When will that be implemented?
So I would think that if we have it in time for the special town meeting, we would start it right off the bat.
So it's also used for small.
For special meetings, yeah, I mean, it could be for anything, and I don't know if there are any other times where it would really be appropriate, maybe something like the master plan. But now that we have the system, it doesn't need to be limited to just town meeting voting necessarily.
So it could be used for presidential elections.
No, because it's just a clicker,
I got you.
and the results show up on the screen.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking, yeah, town meetings, definitely annual and special town meetings.
And all the times where we'd have to do paper, it replaces all the paper ballots and makes the counting of votes much simpler and
The
more
holding up of the yellow.
Well, holding up
accurate.
and even I think when we do a debt exclusion and a secret ballot, we don't have to pause for however long to let the voting happen.
Just be
People can
going
just
as
click.
you do it.
So that's the advantage, that's why we originally went with it, and,
Sounds good.
so we'll go with Meridia on that. The next item on the agenda is, speaking of town meeting, the special town meeting warrant.
Can I suggest, I'm just gonna suggest that when we have people waiting to speak with us about something, that we move that item up, because it's more polite to deal with them rather than making them wait till whenever it comes up.
Yes,
So since Chris Blair is here and the Concom thing is on it,
Yeah.
can we move that item up?
absolutely, so, and I mean, it's really where we are at right now.
Right,
So, 4A is the request for the Concom
oh, well,
agent
there, sorry
line
about
item. No, I
Yeah.
agree, Susan, and sometimes it's hard to tell what people are here for, but, thanks for joining us, Chris. And, we've had your proposal. It's my understanding that the Concom agent has been previously paid out of the revolving fund and, the Concom is requesting to put a line item in the budget, so that we can have a more robust agent position.
Well, and also, today, we collect a fee from our RDA, the simple format, and we collect a fee from the notice of intent. We're talking about adding some fees, but there's going to be limits to how much we can add fees to other paperwork. I mean, it's real work and real people are doing activities, and so there's no reason. I mean, it takes Kim or somebody some time to process a building permit request or the closure of different applications. So it seems that funding is limited, and
So,
we have to advertise out of that funding too. So when we get $100, we have to spend X dollars on advertising that particular public meeting. So we really don't net a high amount.
so my question, Chris, is the agent, to my understanding, is currently allotted 25 hours a month at $25 per hour, which,
That's the upper limit at the moment.
okay. And my quick calculations puts that at 7,500 a year, and you're proposing 10,800 a year to 14,700 a year. So
Yeah,
if we already have been paying $7,500 a year, could we use that money from those fees and then have a smaller line item? Because $7,500 that we've already been allotting seems like a significant portion towards the 10,800.
Or change any of those.
Yeah.
Right, it, at worst, it's half, and at best, it's 2/3 or 3/4.
Or have the revolving funds been running dry, or have we been asking the agent to work less because the revolving funds are running out?
Well, we're always mindful of her hours and I keep a kind of a glance at how many she's spending and so on. I have the ledger sheets, and the summary Melissa made for me in gross numbers, says that we took in around, let's see, what's the revenue? So we took in approximately 11, 12, 6, $1,800, and we paid out $2,600 in the same period. So that's not going to do well over time.
So, but you did pay out less than you
No.
received. I thought, was it 2,800 and 2,600?
3,600.
Oh.
1,800 and 2,600.
3,600,
Okay.
yeah, sure, buddy.
Sorry. And I mean, what would it look like to raise fees to cover costs?
How much would fees have to go up to cover costs, in other words?
I don't know. I haven't done that exercise. There will be, it will impose a little bit of a hardship on some people who don't have an unlimited checkbook. There are people who have to file with conservation regardless of, the nature of their project. And so, yeah, it's hard. I didn't do that exercise and how much we'd have to raise the fees, but maybe doubling.
Wow, okay. What's the current fee?
For the simple format on RDA, it's 100. And
Okay.
for the notice of intent, I believe it's also 100, but there's an additional fee share with the state. In other words, the state says, if you're going to build a house, you've got to pay, let's just say $500, and the town gets 67% of that. It's an odd formula, but anyway. So,
Is the select board in the town free to set these fees to any amount that we
yeah,
choose, or are
I
they?
think the Conservation Commission can set that anywhere we wish.
But I think he's expressing the concern that it might not, it might be a financial hardship to some applicants. Is there any provision made for financial exigency if someone, feels like it's a financial burden for them to pay the fee?
No.
Existent?
You got to pay to play.
Right.
Okay,
And I'm happy. I think I'm under the impression, just looking over at the building department, that he's being funded and a certain amount of that fee, the fees he collects offsets his salary or expense, whatever you will call it.
yeah, the building fees that the town collects are, if I'm not mistaken, well in excess of the building inspector's salary, but that's just a different situation. And then the electric and plumbing inspectors just get most of the fee. But I mean, it's a completely different situation, but I do wanna look into if we could maybe set the fee so that the fee covers all of the work that the town has to do for RDAs and NOIs. I think that is somewhat fair. I know it is a real cost, but it is a real cost to the town to, do the work of the Conservation Commission. Maybe we could reflect that in the fee.
Yeah, and that's an easy thing to do.
But otherwise, we can definitely look into a line item, and I guess maybe I'll do a little bit more research on this and try and come up with some numbers, for what fees to cover cost would look like, and see how reasonable that would be. Does that sound
You do that?
fair?
It does. I would even go so far as to say that, if there is a serious concern that there are people who would have a financial exigency, the town could even have set aside some monies just for that. So we could raise the fees to cover it and have some monies that available if someone applies and can document that they have financial. I mean, it's another hoop for them to jump through, and I know that's unpleasant, but it gives the town some flexibility to help somebody out that really can't, should that situation arise. I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah, and I don't know the legal,
Yeah, I don't know.
that'd be my first question, is
Right.
that legal? Cause if we set a fee, it really should be
For everybody.
for everyone.
Well, there's plenty
How
of
do you,
things,
how do you figure out who's got the cash in the bills?
there are plenty of things where towns, have a separate rate if you can show that your income is below a certain level. That's not unusual at all, for all kinds of fees, including like dump stickers. There are towns where if your income level is below a certain amount, you get a discounted dump sticker.
The only difference here being RDAs and NOIs are not Monterey.
Monterey
things.
specific, absolutely, absolutely.
But thank you for joining us, Chris, and we're gonna do some more research and take a second look at the numbers and see what raising fees would look like versus a line item in the budget to properly fund an agent. Okay,
Okay,
thank you for joining us.
you bet. Thank you.
Hey, Chris,
I see that hello, Maximum. Do you have a comment?
I do have a comment. On behalf of the other 129 people that voted for Scott, I want to welcome you to the board and to the town and to management, and thank you one more time for stepping up to the plate. I know you've been here before, and I'm not asking you how long you're gonna be here for, but as long as you're here.
At least till 8 tonight.
What'd you say?
I said at least till 8 tonight.
Okay. So, welcome.
But thank you.
And you have our vote of confidence.
Okay. Yes,
If I may.
yeah, please identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dan Moriarty, and I've been a member of the Finance Committee in this town for several years. Scott, I just wanted to say that I'm happy to see you taking this position, and I wish you good luck, and I hope that you get some of the backing without the discounts. And I know you're here for a good reason, and I wish you a lot of luck. And that's it, I'm out.
Thank you.
All right, hands
It
up.
was nice of you to come just for that.
Thank you very much, especially in wait for an hour and a half.
Yeah, really.
Are we still in
Thank you,
old
Dan.
business?
We are still in old business, and I do wanna, so we thanks again, Chris, for joining us, and we will continue to research that and probably have it on the agenda for next week, deal with it swiftly. We do have the rest of the town meeting warrant. I do wanna interrupt briefly to discuss with Scott and Susan whether we want to enter executive, for everyone here, we exited executive session, but to be continued later. Would we like to go back into executive session at the end of the meeting or right now? What do you think?
I sort of feel like I prefer to wait because all these people waited so patiently to be here, and I'm not sure what they're here for, but I'd like to respect their presence by not making them wait out in the
Yeah,
hall again,
so-
as much as I'd like to get that done.
My only question would be, Donna, are you still on the line? Because I just don't want to,
Well, if she comes back and says, time's up, then we can
Yeah.
change that around.
I just wanna make sure she's not waiting for us. Alright, so Don, we're gonna continue with, oh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, yep, I'm
Our-
here.
So we were going to continue the rest of our open meeting session and then enter into executive session at the end of the meeting. I think we have all the guidance from you that we need, so I think we could,
Is that,
you could, a meeting, if that's comfortable with you. I just don't want you to have to wait around for an hour or more for a few minutes of executive session at the end of the meeting.
Some difficulties. Can you chat her just to see if that's?
No, we have chat for off on.
Okay.
I can send her a quick.
Go for it.
I just wanna be
No, yeah,
clear
but-
that we're not
exactly.
waiting, that she's not waiting for us.
I mean, I think at this point, if
So
there's a
she
tiny
left.
change, it's not a problem.
is she still?
Yeah, it's just-
All we have to do is either sign this or not sign it, right? Hand it back to Melissa.
I mean, and
She'll
if there is
download that
a
in.
minor change we wanna make, we can make it, but I don't think that would make a big difference to the general conduct.
I just wanna be. Okay, I let her know that, I thanked her and said that we can take the rest of it from here. Alright, so the other items on this, draft warrant we have been discussing for about a month, Scott, but they're all new to you, obviously. We have Bidwell Park, which has trees down and is closed to the public. We have the community center, which is very different from Bidwell Park, because all of the downed trees and limbs have been cleaned up. What we have is about 5 or 6 main stems that are broken off and are just still standing. And then the money, 25,600 is actually an estimate for removing those snapped off trunks, as well as about 20 other mature white pines.
For some reason,
That
I
are-
thought
that
that
are
estimate was just the damaged trees.
No, I was
No,
with
okay.
Jim, I
Okay,
met with Jim last week, as I said I would do at the last meeting.
great.
And the reasoning behind this request is that this stand of tall white pines, about every major storm in the past couple of years, one will snap off. I do think it's a lot more of a discretionary expense than down at Bidwell Park, because the trees, I mean, the average person would probably look at these 20+ trees and say, that's a healthy tree, that's a fine tree. What's happening though is as they fall over, they're not protecting the other ones, and then they're more susceptible to the wind and, so I do think it's a little bit more discretionary of a expense. It's
And
on this
possibly
draft,
wait.
it's on this draft warrant. The trees that are snapped off, it's my understanding they don't pose any real threat of coming down in the next year, because now they're very aerodynamic actually, but they are unsightly. So that's where we're at. I wanna be clear so that everyone knows, this is not, other than at Bidwell Park, at the community center, it's not picking up trees that are down and across the roadway around the garden, that's all been done. This is really more, we have trees continue to come down in this area, and we think it'd be safe, to remove all of them all at once. It's just, it would not be a clear cut of the whole stand, but it would be removing all of the tall, mature white pines. I really think everyone should go individually, or we should schedule a meeting with Jim so that we know, Jim Hunt, the Director of Operations, so that everyone's on the same page. Because it's not as cut and dry as Bidwell Park where there's just trees down
Mhm.
everywhere. It is a little bit
Really
more
scary,
traditional.
dangerous streets, yeah.
So who's gonna do the cutting if approved?
So we have a contract with John Field, so he would do the work, or John W. Field Tree Service. And I believe we'd be legally required to use him at our set contract rates. We had a 1-year contract which we renewed a couple months ago, so we're on our 2nd year of the contract. And these estimates, I think it was 25,600 for each property. Were based on how many days. We can view that information from Jim, and also probably be good to meet with him. So there's those 2 tree works. We'll also meet, maybe we don't need to delve too deep into this tonight, because we are meeting with the finance committee sooner than later to discuss this special town meeting.
Next week, is it?
I don't know if next week is gonna happen.
Okay, because of the new meeting.
But we can
With the
schedule.
fine town.
Yeah. And then the Article 3 is 8,500 for the upgrade to the elevator in town hall because there was a code change. I was wondering, Melissa, would it be possible to make a reserve fund transfer request from the finance committee for this? Because I think that might be appropriate, because they have 30,000 in the reserve fund, and I think it was very unexpected. We were told after budgeting season, after the fiscal year began, that the elevator, there was nothing changed about our elevator, but the code changed, and we need to pay for the upgrade. So I would prefer if that comes out of reserve fund.
Why? I'm not opposed, I just wanted to read it.
I just think it's within all the parameters of reserve fund, and it's an amount. I think if the tree cleanup and work was less money, it might even come out of the reserve fund. It's just the sheer volume of tree work and the amount that's making it not really a reserve fund item.
Do you know what the balance is in the reserve fund?
30,000.
30,000, they haven't spent any, they haven't transferred any money out of it yet.
In free cash,
Free cash is not
Is it
certified,
roughly?
We're likely to have over 400,000.
and stabilization, we have about 600,000 maybe.
And is it looking on track to have the free cash certified before the October date?
Yes, but I need you to decide the meeting date
Right,
tonight.
I know.
Okay, so the last item, did you get the bills from the cemetery commission? Okay, we are
We do
working,
have 2 additional bills to add to it from other departments.
okay. So we have some bills from last fiscal year that we didn't pay, and the only way, as you know, to get those paid is special town meeting. So that's kind of a very good thing to have in the warrant article. A couple other items, which one we've already dealt with, is the Concom agent could potentially end up on the special town meeting warrant, and then the school district, planning board, asked for $15,000, which this is one potential funding source. But I'm hoping we could take the elevator and make a reserve fund transfer request. And then I really think, and I asked Melissa to split up these 2 tree work into 2 separate articles, because it really is fundamentally different work between Bidwell Park and Community Center. I think it's really important, everyone should get up there with Jim, and if we wanna go together, we can host a meeting. But it was enlightening, after I saw the map, it was very enlightening to go up there and meet with him. And I think most people agree that once there's a stand of tall pines like that, and they start going, the whole system is weakened and they start going at a higher rate. But a lot of people would also look at those trees and say they look completely healthy. So that's just to be aware of that. Scheduling of the special town meeting. The town clerk said that she is available Saturday, October 8th after 3 p.m. and October 15th anytime. I would propose October 15th at 1 p.m. It would give us a couple more weeks to finalize what we want on the warrant and post it with more than advance notice, hopefully, than we even need necessary, if we're gonna get it posted in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so we're not running up against deadlines.
And I don't think we wanna be late in the day because I
The
understand.
moderator did say they'd have it after 1, so maybe 1:30.
But he also said that he was not comfortable doing it indoors at the fire station.
Right.
So we need to leave it early enough that it's neither too cold nor too dark,
Who's uncomfortable?
the moderator.
So my proposal would be Saturday, October 15th at 1 PM or 1:30 PM, if,
Have you run that past the moderator?
So I was just made aware today that the clerk could do the 15th, so I sent an email to Mark and he has not answered me if he's available on the 15th or not.
okay, that's.
Right, okay. But
Um,
I would propose that pending approval by the moderator,
Yeah,
that
Well-
we go with your,
and we also need to finalize the warrants. It'd be great to have a day sooner than later, but,
Right.
So I need the day for her to send in the free cash certification. We have to say when the town meeting is.
let's say October 15th.
as soon as possible. Why don't we tell her October 8th? I mean, but seriously, like, we
Yeah,
want,
then there's a little swing time
because it'd be good to know, have free cash certified
prior.
prior,
Yep.
not run up against deadline.
I think she has to put in like special town meeting date.
Okay.
Can't we?
Alright, so we'll
When do we
tentatively,
have to assuming it's on the 15th,
14 days prior.
14 days prior,
14 days
Okay.
prior,
which would be
and
like the 1st of October.
we typically have been mailing special town warrants, special town meeting warrants, but the only requirement is posting.
I think if we
Yeah.
don't mail it,
Does
we're
our
not gonna.
bylaw say we have to mail?
Our bylaw says, it does say special,
I think it says.
so we'll mail them out as well, and the earlier we can do it, the more.
The more chance there are people getting time, yep.
So if there's no opposition, we'll go with October 15th, which is a Saturday.
And that's the date we're telling Terry?
What's that?
Yes.
We're telling her October 15th.
She said she's available
Yeah,
October
not the-
15th,
Not the 8th.
not the 8th. October 15th, Saturday, and we'll do 1 or 1:30. And that can change slightly as we finalize the rest of what will even be on the warrant. I will try again to get those fiscal year 22 bills, and it sounds like from a few departments, so
Yes,
we'll,
there's a $170 bill from the Council on Aging. They just received the bill yesterday, and then there is a $150 bill for the porta potty at the transfer station.
okay.
That
So-
was received just a week ago as well.
But we can't, so just clarifying, because I don't understand, if we don't get the bill till now, why can't we pay it out of monies available now? Why do we have to pay
Because
it?
it's from services,
If they didn't give it to us, how can we pay a bill we don't have?
we can only pay for, we're using monies for the for the year.
We're
of
at third
services.
currency, okay,
Yep. It's supposed to be
that's the
this
way it
fall.
is, just don't ask the question, okay.
I mean, if we weren't, look, here's the other thing. There was a large
Yeah.
bill that it was the town's fault that didn't get paid, and we wanna take care of that. If there's other companies that are large companies sending in very small bills, and it's their fault it's late, we could put it off till annual town meeting.
Right.
But we have, one bill that is the town's fault, it hasn't been paid, and it's
Right.
relatively large to the company size, and, I think it's important it does get paid. So we'll go tentatively with October 15th, Saturday, 1 or 1:30, and we'll continue to work on the tree articles. Is there any opposition to having at least a discussion with the finance committee about whether the elevator code upgrade can come out of the reserve fund?
No problem at all. Discuss
Okay.
anything you want.
And then, the deadline to pay bills, and we're working on the town agent. So as far as I'm concerned, that takes care of the special town meeting warrant. The next item on the agenda is review town administrator job description and corresponding draft memo. So one of the agreements that came out of mediation that Melissa and I did was to review the town administrator job description and draft memo, and we're also in the process of reviewing all job descriptions with the human resources director. bit by bit. The police chief's one may come up tonight as well. What I also realize is that we should do this with advice from Sophia. So I don't know that we should really act on this tonight. Maybe we'll table it till we've had a chance to review with Sophia.
And I know she's willing to be present when we review it, if we want that, so we can have a discourse, we just have to give her advance warning of that.
Yes, and so we'll work on that. There's just a job description of the town administrator and then a memo to all departments to clarify the town administrator's role.
Yes.
But we'll take care of that at our next meeting. I do wanna jump in the spirit of
Working with people.
working with people who are here. Virgil Stucker is here. Thank you for joining us, Virgil. Virgil raised an interesting point. This would be item number 19B in documents. Which is that Beartown State Forest and all state forests are charging $30 to all non-residents for parking, for one-time parking. Whereas local Massachusetts residents pay $8 each time they park, and you can get a senior pass, which allows you to park all year round for only $10. And what can be done to prevent non-residents who may even be seniors from paying $30 every time they want to park at a state park?
And actually, I think technically it's a state forest, isn't it? It's Beartown State Forest, but
19B,
But
sorry.
it's interesting,
No,
for
I don't have
national
19B.
parks,
The
you
Memo.
can gather
It's
pass no
under-
matter where you're from, right? But it's because it's a state park, and I did go check, you're right, you have to give it.
Yeah, Virgil.
Virgil Stucker, thank you. So this has to do with Beartown. It's a new fee as far as I understand. As a non-resident, I mean, I'm a taxpayer in town, I have 2 properties. I've been in and around Monterey since 1975. And I also pay Massachusetts income tax, but I'm not technically a Massachusetts resident because I'm half the time in North Carolina. And frankly, I've kept my vote there because it seems to make a bigger difference in that area. But anyway, that is not the issue. The issue is, we live on Blue Hill, going down to Benedict Pond, walk around. It's been something we've done. We're here almost 6 months of the year. We love going down, walking around. And now I'm told, okay, it's $30 every time we would like to go park and take a walk around Benedict Pond. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I pay real estate tax, that helps cover the roads, helps to cover the fire services for the state forest, helps to cover emergency services, police services. You know, isn't that enough? Why do I have to pay $30 every time with there's no pass, no annual pass that you can get? It just seems unfair, and I realize this is not a Monterey fee. This is a state fee, and I'm not sure what standing the select board might have to do anything about this, but I bring it to your attention as, you know, a loyal Monterey, you know, lover and almost resident. This is something that's really penalizing us. I don't know if, and I'm happy to work on other things too. I thought I'd bring it to Smitty to see if he might have some impact on this. But it could be that a letter from the select board to the state saying, you know, perhaps non-Massachusetts residents who are also taxpayers, own property, have dump stickers, and all the 9 yards, should be able to have some sort of different sort of concession in there. Does that make sense? Okay.
It does, I kind of feel like anybody, no matter where you live, that wants to buy an annual pass for parking at parks in any state ought to be able to do that. It's linked to your license plate number. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to link it to an out-of-state license plate number. I mean, you have to have a Mass driver's license and a Mass license plate number. I don't know how much we could do, but I would agree with you that it would seem reasonable to have, even if the rate were different, for an out-of-state car, I don't see why they couldn't make it possible to purchase an annual permit.
Yeah,
I agree.
it seems reasonable.
Don't know that we can do much about it, but we can
And I
try.
realize you've got so many other things to do, I don't mean to burden you with this, but I think it's not just us, I think there are other people who live in Monterey who are not, full-time Massachusetts residents that pay a lot in taxes that seem like they shouldn't be penalized if they want to go and enjoy the forest, enjoy Benedict Pond.
Is it just because your plate is from North Carolina, or is this fee for anybody that shows up there?
Anyone with an out-of-state plate has to pay $30 every time they park at Benedict Pond.
How about the rest of the state forests?
If you go on the website, you can see that there are multiple state forests where this applies. It's a new fee.
Purchase an annual parking pass for Massachusetts state parks. It's what comes up if you're interested in parking, if you click from
That's
their
what I
town.
thought.
Yeah, and it says you need a Mass driver's license, a Mass license plate number. It's valid only for the vehicle license plates, including your order. You can't transfer it, basically, there's no longer anything available for, out of state.
So.
They used to have it and they changed it,
Yeah.
so I don't know why.
So one immediate short-term relief is that the library does have a pass that can be checked out, but doesn't solve the whole problem. Susan, would you be willing to draft a letter to Smitty Pignatelli?
Sure.
And alert him that we have residents of Monterey who are community members and facing this very high fee to park at a park that they may, live right next to. And so we can sign that next week.
Yep.
Draft that next
Well,
week.
I appreciate it. I know that there's a lot that you're dealing with, but it impacts you, something that you've generally enjoyed. It's like, wait a minute, $30 every time I want to go walk around Benedict Pond.
And the state forest is such a large land area out of the town of Monterey. So,
Thank you.
thank you,
You're
Virgil.
very welcome.
Okay, that will settle 19B. Susan will work on a letter for the board to consider at our next meeting to our state representatives. I also see, Don, you are here. Are you here for the regional school district planning board items in particular?
I'm here because I'm 83 and I don't have very much else to do.
Okay. So
To tell you the truth.
So do you want us to jump to your item?
Wait,
You wanna sit?
secondly, I wanted to see how you guys got along.
Okay,
And there are a few things that I'm interested in.
okay, so we'll just continue on as
Yeah.
normal. We won't jump to any particular items.
We won't pay attention to you.
Okay,
That's okay.
so next item we have regularly, we will not do the jumping around and move in order now. So we have old business number 6, which is review executive session minutes to determine if disclosure is appropriate. So one thing that the board is tasked with doing is to review executive session minutes on a regular basis to determine if they should be released to the public. And we held a lot of executive sessions last year. We released the majority of them. And there's still 3 from last year's board and 1 from the board of Susan and I that have not been released to the public. We can either discuss this and make a decision as a board, or we can delegate the decision to one member of the board as to if the minutes should be released. And there is some guidance from Donna, which I believe I sent to you or sent to Melissa to send you.
I have.
About what factors we should consider when determining if executive session minutes should be released.
Is having not been party to the meetings.
Mhm.
Does that make me the person who would wanna read them as like an outside? Or does
I'm only
it kind of
party to one
exclude
of
me
them, so,
from,
right.
from what's going on because I was not party to it?
It's up to you. I mean, it's a decision that the board can make. Since I've been involved in all 4 of the executive sessions, the board could delegate the decision to me. But I wanted to bring it up to get input from you.
Sure.
The other thing we could do is, since you are now a member of the board, you don't have to have been there to approve minutes or to determine if they should be released. You can look at what Donna advised us on when executive session minutes should be released. You can look at the minutes and make that decision, although you weren't there.
As I understand it, they've all been approved, but they haven't been released.
Yes, so there is the
Which is
burden.
yeah,
I gotcha.
So I just wanted to bring that to the board. We can come back to it at the next meeting after we've had time to review the minutes and determine if we wanna delegate that decision to one member, or who I think would likely be me, because I was the one who was there, but that doesn't have to be, it could be anybody.
Yeah, does
Or
that
we
make-
could,
That's not transparency though.
Yeah.
Because you might wanna hold something back that could become damaging to your person.
yes, yeah. So I
I'll
think,
take that role.
you wanna take that role?
Sure.
and I will say that I've actually reviewed them, and I felt that they were all acceptable for release. My only hesitation was that, the October 4th minutes have attached a transcript that's very patchy.
So one
And I
thing,
would prefer to see that deleted if we're releasing them, because they're almost unintelligible.
one thing that happens when you're on a board of 3 people is you can come up with minutes that you feel are really good, and then the other 2 members of the board refuse to approve them. And so you make compromises to actually have an approved set of minutes.
Mhm.
I would tend to agree with Susan that I think that 10-4, 11-4, and 11-17 are appropriate to be released at this time. But I did wanna bring that before the board and not make that decision on my own outside of a meeting.
Can
And
I
I
ask,
think the
can
6-8
I ask
ones
that
are
we let that go,
Mhm.
so that I'm not influenced one way or another? And that I read it as I would read it,
Absolutely.
and put the gut feeling out, rather than know that you guys are good with this, but maybe not that, and this, that, and the other.
My only hesitation was that the transcript's incomplete. Like, I have a problem with something that's unintelligible.
Well,
Everything,
yeah.
right, good, that's my only reason, not that there's anything in there that I'm trying to get rid of,
That's
just that
fine.
it's not intelligible.
Alright, so we'll come back to that.
And do you have Donna's guidance on when it can be released also? But we
I
can
have
get you
no, very little guidance.
that. Okay,
My
so
own.
we need to get you
I
both
think-
those minutes and the
Yes.
guidance, okay.
I did send the minutes.
You did
Okay.
send them in.
I
Okay.
think, let me check, I think I sent right as this meeting was beginning. No.
Scott, I will send you
Sure.
the guidance on when, because it wasn't immediately clear to me, and so I asked to go to town council when executive session minutes should be released.
And I thought her guidance was very helpful.
Okay. And we will deal with that at a future meeting, we'll make a decision. Old business number 7, appointment to vacant finance committee seat, so we have 4 applicants. We are waiting on the finance committee to interview those applicants and make the recommendation. That's all, we're waiting on them, if at some point, hopefully they get to it sooner or later. New business, number 8, advertising hiring process for new police chief. So, as the current police chief is planning retirement December 31st at the end of this year, so it's just 4 months, September, October, 4 months from now. Melissa as town administrator and Sophia as HR director have come up with a tentative timeline for the hiring process. And I wanted to just bring it before the board so that the board is all on the same page. And also, it's our first hiring of a department head with an HR director and town administrator and select board. So Melissa proposed getting an ad put out in the next couple of weeks, have the board approve it and advertised in all the usual places that we advertise it. We would conduct interviews in October, early November. I believe the plan was for Melissa and Sophia to do the initial round of interviews, and Garrett, and the current chief. And then the board would do the second round of interviews in November.
Those people that they've chosen.
Yes.
Do we have any before that sounds good, but before any of us meet with them, I would like to see some guidance on what the rules are for municipalities concerning internal versus external hires and advertising process.
First of all, we have to just follow our normal advertising, what we've done in the past.
Best practice.
Okay,
Best practice, right?
but I wasn't sure what best practice included, and because like, I know with universities, you have to do a certain, for a permanent job, you can do an opportunity hire, but you have to do certain types of advertising. You can give some preferential treatment to people who have already worked for the school and whose work you know, but there's a lot of rules that guide that situation when you're looking at external candidates versus internal ones, and I wasn't sure if there were similar guidelines concerning municipal hires. Okay.
So we will, I think Sophia's probably coming into our meeting next week, and we can touch base on this with her. She's also, I don't believe we have a job description at this point for the,
So I have one, I just got one from Garrett, and now Sophia and I are
Sophia
gonna
is
look it over and
the
HR
chair.
work on it. We're also working on some questions and the advertisement.
okay, so we'll have the advertisement out soon. There will be a preliminary round of interviews with the HR director, the current chief, and the town administrator. Those interviews will happen after the posting has been out for at least a month. And then the second round of candidates will be interviewed by the board in November.
Finalists, I thought.
Okay.
Is that second round strictly by the board, or is it with the HR and the TA as well?
I don't know, the speakers I use, because we would have already interviewed them. We're gonna make our recommendations for the final.
And I mean, if anyone, it seems like a reasonable process to me, if there's any comments. Okay,
My only comment I made.
okay, all right. That takes care of advertising, hiring process for the new police chief. The next item on new business is the town clerk office hours proposal.
I move that we table that.
Yeah,
Wait, why? I thought we were gonna finish the letter.
That's in an executive session.
Right, but when you say table it to executive
Table
session at
number
the end of the
9.
meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
you just said table, that means indefinitely.
That.
well, actually,
It means-
Jeremiah always said table actually means to later in the meeting, put out to pasture means
Oh, okay.
indefinite. We use table as
Postpone.
not due
Okay.
again unless we specify, but really I think Scott's right.
Okay, then it just means till later in the meeting.
Yes, Don?
The exception you had for the meeting with council
Mhm.
was preparation for negotiations with the clerk.
Mhm.
Are you saying that now in executive session, you're going to be,
We're finalizing something that was drafted during that session, in a,
in preparation for discussing with the clerk?
Yes, this is a negotiation process and the board is deliberating on preparing
What-
for
okay,
negotiations.
I got it.
That's my understanding. And that is why we can legally meet in executive session,
I got it.
because
Yeah, we continued that session.
legal strategy for preparing for negotiations. So I would second Scott's motion
yes,
to table this item to executive session at that meeting. And I will call vote on that motion. Susan,
yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Justin, yes, motion carries.
Is that And that, you didn't vote on whether you're gonna come back to public session after that.
We weren't
We
done.
were,
Not going to come back to public
no, that'll be,
session
we'll
after.
do it at the end of the meeting,
Yeah.
and then we will,
I'm sorry?
we will do the
And not-
executive
and not
session
become-
at the end of the meeting and not return.
And not, okay.
Okay. The next new business item is a $15,000 request for funding from the 8-town regional school district planning board. So the regional school district planning board is not receiving the funds from the state budget that they thought they were going to receive, and needs money to continue doing their work, and decided to request $15,000 from each of the 8 towns and the 2 school districts.
What was the request, 15 from each town?
15,000 from each town and from the 2 school districts, so Southern Berkshire and Monument Mountain Regional, or Berkshire Hills.
That's from each town.
From each town. So,
Adjusted total of 150 grand.
Which is crazy, but what is the funding being used for?
it's my understanding, right, it's for continuing research and, right, it lays out here, the project manager, the research team, administration,
I don't-
Abraham's finance, maybe Don Coburn can fill us in what that is, legal, website, community outreach, so consultants, facilitator supplies, lead teachers. Don, since you were at the meeting, I believe, where this request was agreed upon, do you have anything that you wanna fill us in on?
I give you a little bit of background, particularly for Scott. The state has given about $300,000 to fund this. And previously, 6 or 8 months ago, I think, something like that, each of the towns was asked for and gave $8,000.
That was supplied?
Huh?
Was that money supplied?
Yes, that was approved and
At
supplied.
an annual town meeting?
It was not this one, but the previous one.
Previous.
I can't remember. We tried to get additional money from the state, and that didn't work. This started out at the meeting, this is all public, with a statement from Berkshire Hills that they were willing to contribute up to $60,000, provided that Southern Berkshire gave the same amount, or if they would reduce their 60, whatever amount.
To whatever
So-
Berkshire would.
The representatives of Southern Berkshire were very negative about that, school board members who, part of our,
About the 60?
about anything, really. So there was a big debate about what to do with all kinds of proposals going around, and none of them was really satisfactory, but this is the one that the board voted on.
What
Treating
happens if it doesn't get
Huh?
funded? What happens if,
That'll
one
be
or
the
more
end
of the towns
That'll
don't-
be the end of the project. Two years of work, hundreds of meetings, about $350,000, because we did get some other grant money. Will have been wasted. So it's an
And-
unfortunate, situation.
what
for sure.
happens if 6 of the 10 groups
Oh,
say yes and
God
4
only
no?
knows what's
Will
gonna
it still
happen.
be?
I don't know what's gonna happen. The Jake, the manager is a terrific guy, very experienced, very solid, very fair, very honest. He's telling us what the balance of the work will cost. And I think there's good reason to accept that as a reasonable estimate. I don't know what the other towns will do. I don't know what the school district will do. I'm sure that the Berkshire Hills will vote it because they were willing to go up to 60. What will happen down in Southern Berkshire? I don't know. you know, it kind of relate, frankly, I think that it's partly resistance to the overall plan that's coming probably largely from Sheffield.
So how are we expected to, I mean, usually our budgeting process is in the spring and at town meeting, so how is the school district planning board expecting towns to get $15,000?
Through special town meetings or through transfers, internal transfers. They're not telling towns what to do, they're laying the problem for the towns. I think for Monterey, it's a question of kind of a leadership issue. Is this something that we want to get to the people to decide? Do we want to run the risk of destroying it before people even have a chance to vote on it? So I don't know what will happen, but I hope that we will, at the very least, give our people at a special meeting a chance to be heard on it, which is what I thought you were talking about earlier.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it could end up on a special town meeting where conveniently we're calling a special town meeting for unrelated reasons, so I was just curious what other towns
Yeah,
are
we
expecting.
don't know, because we do not know.
So,
And by the way, we run out of money on October 1st.
Okay.
Who's we?
The eight
The town regional board.
so I
I
would,
wouldn't mind seeing the accounting for that.
yeah, so I would say, Lucy said we would be happy to appear at your next available meeting to address any questions. I would move that we invite her to our next meeting to answer questions that we have and then maybe make more of a clear decision on where the $15,000 might come from.
At the very least, I mean, like, I would like to hear from Lucy. I think that it's not unreasonable, since we're having a special town meeting, to put it on the warrant to have it discussed, but that doesn't, but I can say that the conversation with Lucy might influence how I voted as a citizen, never mind as a select board.
Yeah.
So,
What she would most want is that, if it can be done legally, is that the money be voted by the board to come either from emergency funds, transport, reserve fund, or something like that.
yeah, that
What's that?
I don't think that I'd be willing to do that. If we're gonna do it at all, I'd wanna get the town's vote on it before I committed those monies, because
I
I'm not
wasn't
sure.
making the argument, I was just
Right,
saying,
no,
I know
yeah, I'm
that,
just letting you know.
because she's
I'm sure
concerned
she
about the timing, and
Of
she's
course.
concerned about what Justin raised, are the other towns planning regional, special meetings? And are they gonna be willing, if they aren't, to have a special meeting for this? And we don't know the answer to the question.
I would move that the motion's on the floor,
I'll second.
that we invite Lucy to our next meeting to get more clarification on this. We have a second. Any further discussion or public comment? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan?
Yep.
Scott? Sure. Yes, and Justin, yes, motion carries. We'll invite Susan. So item number 11, also dealing with the 8-town regional school district planning board, and
I don't have anything in writing on that.
so I did, and I
Oh,
didn't,
okay.
I didn't send it to you. But I just wanted to alert the board, and circumstances have changed now. They're not forming a school district agreement committee, and that work is going to be done by the whole board. But they did approach. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, in part. The vote was to have the finance subcommittee deal with the issue of taxation based on a report to come from Mars.
Okay.
There are two critical issues, apart from if you want a regional high school or not. The two most critical issues are how do you tax and what's the constitution of the board.
Yeah.
And The finance committee is gonna do the first run at the question of taxation. And I wrote to you on that, by the way, and I truly meant it. I'm no expert on finance. Any input that you guys wanna have through me on that, or you can come to our meetings yourself, would be more than welcome, because that's a tough decision.
And the
For
second part?
example, I don't know if you know this, but I just learned Stockbridge changed their method of taxation after Great Barrington voted down high school money a couple of years ago. So Stockbridge took on a greater burden than they were taking on before. They're not so happy about that now.
But they're not.
So, and just to,
Really complicated.
so how the school district agreement gets drafted is now, like Don said, by the whole board and the
Right.
finance committee,
Right.
finance subcommittee.
And
But I wanna
part,
share something with the board, which is that Lucy Prashka, as the chair of the school district planning board, did reach out to a Monterey resident to see if they would serve on the school district agreement committee. And so I asked her, what's the process? How are you choosing people for the school district agreement committee? And I'm gonna send this email to you, but she said, the chair of the RSDPB makes the selections informed by any suggestion from the town's respective select boards. Which I thought was interesting because they never asked for input from the town's select boards unless I missed something. And I said, interesting that you're seeking input from the select board, but not telling us that you're seeking input from the select boards.
Well, you didn't answer it, did you?
Turns out they're not even, that there's gonna be no school district agreement committee, but at the time I posted this agenda,
Right.
I was of the understanding that the select board may be making input, and later learned that at the meeting last Wednesday, that was changed.
Can I follow up on something Don said?
Yeah.
Which is that, so the finance committee is taking on the issue of taxation, and the board as a whole is gonna take up the issue of representation of the school?
No, take up all the other issues.
All the
There are, if you wanna see, you can go online and look at the regional school district agreement that we now have in the towns that we're involved in.
Yes, I've
So-
seen it,
You have to create a document that's gonna look a lot like that.
Right.
Except that it's gonna be different in the board, and it's gonna be different in taxation.
Mhm.
And there also might be differences in withdrawal. That might be an issue too. When can the town withdraw from the regional school district?
Okay, and we'll have Lucy here next meeting if she's available, so we can discuss that as well. There are no town administrator items, so that would be item number 12. Item 13 is recommendations from the Human Resources Director on draft policies for non-discrimination, professionalism, vacation, and holiday pay. I don't think that we have time to tackle these
I was
tonight.
just gonna say, I'm gonna suggest we table those till next week.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a preferred method, if we wanna tackle one at a time until we've dealt with all four. I will be recusing myself for the policies on vacation and holiday pay, as the outcome of those policies would directly affect the financial status of myself and family members.
And they're actually, it's vacation and holiday for part-time employees, I believe, were the questions she was.
So I will only be working on the non-discrimination and professionalism policies, just FYI. But we will not deal with those tonight, and
Do we need to-
Sophia will be in next week, hopefully.
Do we need to make a motion on that?
You can if you wish.
Okay.
Otherwise, we
I
can
don't have a need to, but
we can just agree to deal with them.
Yeah, that
Okay.
works.
Number 14 is select a representative for the Southeast Sub-Regional Caucus of the Berkshire Metropolitan Planning Organization. They reached out to the town, and there's a meeting on Thursday, September 22nd at 5 PM via Zoom about transportation in Berkshire County. And more or less, the agenda of this meeting is selecting a representative and alternate to be in the Metropolitan Planning Organization from the Southeast Sub-Region. Is anyone available that Thursday, September 22nd at 5 PM to attend the meeting and select a representative.
What's the,
Otherwise, I'm Thursday, September 22nd.
Where's the meeting?
It's on Zoom exclusively.
Yep.
And like I said, the main item on the agenda is out of those people selecting a representative and alternate to the
And
actual
there's
planning
a,
organization.
there's a cast of characters for that position.
so that's the next thing, it's like, so assuming one of us attends, we're electing someone, either we're putting ourselves forward and nobody knows us and we don't know anybody else. It's gonna be a little awkward to make decisions about, like, I guess anyone that puts themselves forward, maybe there currently is no alternate, which does imply that there hasn't been a lot of people putting themselves forward for this. I feel like, although I would be willing to attend the 22nd meeting, I feel like I would not be willing to put myself forward for that because I've already stepped on to too many things already. And I don't wanna commit to something that I can't follow through on. I'm already dealing with the transfer station, the MAB council that I just got elected to, and the open meeting, the
So we could,
master plan, it's just too much.
so we could still select you as the representative for the sub-regional caucus, and then you don't have to volunteer to be the representative.
But if
to the-
someone's willing to serve as a representative, maybe they should.
Well, then you would vote for them.
No, but I meant, if you, for example, were willing to serve,
Not,
then, yeah.
Alright, I would move to select Susan Cooper as the representative for the Southeast Sub-Regional Caucus of the Berkshire Metropolitan Planning Organization, from the representative from Monterey.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion or comment? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan votes.
Yes.
Scott
Yes. I'll
and
vote Susan, sure.
and Justin vote yes. So
Throw me under the bus.
Susan will be the representative to the Southeast Sub-Regional Caucus.
What is that all
Metropolitan
about?
Planning.
Southeast of,
Basically, it's transportation. It has to do with the bus is virtually non-existent, but trying to function buses.
for what purpose?
Moving people from one place to
Well, I know
another.
what a bus does, but for what location? I mean, it says the
So-
southeast sub-region. Where exactly is that?
So I think
Uh,
there's buses right from Lee and Pittsfield and in Great Barrington. There's no buses in Monterey, but we could be tangentially related because someone from Monterey may go to Great Barrington and take a bus. I guess. I mean, it certainly is not the most, the issue most directly related to Monterey.
However, I'm not sure, but I do believe that the Transportation Planning Board, I'm not sure if that's this, has served Monterey in that, like, I know that Tate helped to negotiate a contract to get students from southern Berkshire to Conic for the, there were
Okay.
2 and now there's 5.
Yeah.
And it was gonna cost a fortune, and he was part of the group that negotiated a contract to get a bus that was going to be a way better deal. So he has served us in that we would have been paying through the school that way. Whether there are other applications, I don't know, I just know that one.
And you bring up, we're looking for a Monterey representative from the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, RTAC, because our last representative resigned and we haven't found anyone since. So if anyone wants to serve on
That's
that.
the Berkshire Regional Transit Authority that you mentioned? Or just,
Yeah, but that committee is called, I think, the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee,
okay,
if I'm not mistaken. Alright, so Susan will serve there, thank you, Susan. We are on item 15 of new business. I am going to ask to please be excused for 1 minute for a restroom break. I'm sorry.
don't
I'll be back.
apologize, life goes on. What do you got, annual memorandum of understanding? Whee! Liz is gonna fall off her chair.
Checking in with Scott, thank you.
Why does it feel like 100 items instead of only 21?
I don't understand what makes these ones, and I'm looking at the agenda and it doesn't have those high numbers.
Back page.
To go to the other side, it's two-sided.
No, on new business.
Gotta turn, the new business continues on the next page.
Yeah, but this.
But then it's correspondence, minutes, and public comment.
He called it.
Oh, it
much higher numbers.
restarted the numbers instead of continuing them.
That's weird.
Just mine?
Yeah, so
Where are these now?
I
So
want to
just go
appeal to
8,
the
9,
board about this. Where's it?
Okay, now I
Okay,
have
there's a
to,
disclaimer at the bottom that says changes or.
oh, I see why, you have the, yeah, okay. No, you got this one. Yep. And I got this one.
You got my official
Yeah,
version.
yeah,
Very sneaky.
Just trying to keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Now I gotta figure out where to live it. Oh, I see, you know what, they just renumber, okay.
Yeah, it's
It's the
hard.
same things, they just have.
Oh,
different
yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
Because everybody's working, thinking on the same thing, but it's all have different numbers, we don't know where anybody is.
Yeah. It's a good point. I think I like the consecutive numbers better, so that it's not item 1 3 times.
It's something about when Justin uses the track changes with me, every time he makes a change, it restarts the numbers, and then I have to restart them, or continue them, I mean, and I must not have caught that before I posted it. It's odd when he does it, because usually it will continue the numbering.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We'll resume our agenda on item 15, which is a memorandum of understanding for police lockup in Great Barrington.
I have it here.
We have it there, it's pretty simple, it's $150 per prisoner per day that Monterey sends to the cell in Great Barrington. And the prisoner has 12 hours to make bail, and after that, Monterey transports the prisoner to the House of Corrections. So,
Whose expense is that transportation?
well, it would be Monterey transported.
The state never refunds that.
That's my understanding of the issue. But that's a little, I mean, what we're really agreeing on is the $150 per
I
prisoner.
was just wondering how.
Yeah.
How, just out of, I mean, not that I think this affects that decision, but how many have we had to use the lockup for in the last year, 2 years, name it time?
Last year, I don't think we had too many, but the year before, we had maybe 10, 12,
Wow,
10.
okay.
I think last year we only had 2. Well, I mean, just think anybody that's driving without a license or under the influence,
Okay.
I'll go
Making bombs.
making bombs. I don't think he actually went, did he?
So I would,
Go to jail.
I would move that the board accept the memorandum of understanding for police lockup in Great Barrington.
Second.
Any further discussion or public comment? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan votes, Scott,
Yes.
and Justin, yes, motion carries. We're doing this in the copy. Thank you. All right, that takes care of item number 15. The next item is 16, select board meeting schedule. So since I've been on the board, we went from meeting every other week to meeting every week at 6 PM on Wednesday to meeting on the first Wednesday of the month at noon, and then every following Wednesday at 6 PM, and then usually about every 2 or 3 months, because of a holiday or some other reason, we found the ability to take a week off. August of this year was a little bit different because we held off a meeting the day after the election, because I've never liked that since I got elected. And we didn't meet one time because of another personal reason. But we did have a couple other second homeowners meeting and joint meeting with the finance committee. Anyways, is there a proposal to change that schedule of noon on the first Wednesday of the month and then 6 PM on following Wednesdays.
I would propose to move the 6 PM. I have no problem with one noon meeting. It doesn't seem to me that there's a significant, having done this a bunch of times, there hasn't seemed to be a significant difference in attendance from the midday meetings to the evening meetings. But I will say that I think a meeting from 6 to 8 is a bit onerous. It just goes really late, we all get really tired. It's awkward to eat before and late to eat after. I propose that we move it to 4 to 6 instead of 6 to 8. Yeah, that's what I would propose. I also think that would allow us to have our meeting during the time when the clerk is here, so that she could be consulted or brought in, should there be need for any discussion regarding, hopefully with the election coming up, there won't be a lot more need, but I'm looking forward to saying that would be handy. You guys?
I would prefer to keep the meetings at 6 PM, both for my own work schedule. The noon meeting is certainly a disruption to my workday, but I have made it as a compromise, because I think it's fair to have one daytime meeting a month. I think 4 PM would be more difficult for me than 6 PM.
Even when it gets dark?
Yep.
Which is good too.
Even when it gets dark. But that's just me. I did note last year, we didn't have very many meetings that had little attendance. But the noon meetings didn't seem to have, more likely to have less attendance.
Less attendance than meetings, okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but,
The one advantage to them was that a couple of times when we needed to talk to town employees, they're here.
yes, and I like definitely once a month, I think is fair. But I do prefer the 6 PM to 4 PM.
6 to 8.
Yeah,
You said
well, it
6
doesn't
to 8.
have to be 6 to 8. I think when we've been meeting weekly, we've been able to deal with issues and have shorter agendas. I think obviously tonight we have a pretty long agenda, I think in part because we only met once regularly in the past 3 or 4 weeks. So I would prefer to keep the schedule as is, noon on the first Wednesday of the month and then 6 PM on the following Wednesdays. Myself.
Scott?
Do we need 4 meetings a month?
Well, I will say that I feel like with the 2 weeks in between meetings, it resulted in a really long agenda. And I personally would prefer to have weekly meetings with shorter agendas to every other week with longer agendas, but that's my preference and, I'm willing to compromise. Do you have a preference in time?
I was with you on that, but I also have,
Right.
this is fine.
Okay.
Try to just wrap things up. 8-ish or so, that's good.
I mean, we could even, I think if we meet weekly, and here's the thing is, we can take weeks off. I personally like taking weeks off when we get to a point where we feel comfortable taking a week off, rather than designating, because we may be in a really busy stretch, whether it's budget meetings or whatever. I think last time we took a meeting off, we were at a point where we had been running straight for 3 months and we had dealt with a lot of things, and we felt like it was time to take a week off.
Sure. Let's just say that
Yeah.
discretionary week off, vote on it.
Yeah.
See how we are with what's in front of us.
How about 5 to 7? It's just like.
Well,
6
we
to
don't
8.
need to have 2-hour meetings.
Yeah, okay.
How
many non-2-hour meetings, I think we congratulate ourselves twice for getting out of here before 8. I'm just trying to be realistic. Yeah.
I can make more of an effort as chair to focus on motions and votes, and if there's tangential conversation, we can dismiss it and really focus on what we need to do to get business done. and shoot for shorter meetings.
I'm okay with that, as long as I do think sometimes it's important to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Like, I think that a lot of times, even if it's just people venting, that can participate in the process. We don't need to always let it go on, I'm just saying, I wouldn't want to focus so much on getting out that we shut conversations or discussions down.
Mhm.
But I'm, compromise. I see your point, I just would sort of, I'm pushing to go a little earlier, because 8 seems late if we go over it, but you wanna try the 6 to 8, we can, there's nothing to stop us, changing it again if we feel like it needs to be changed.
Well, don't tell yourself in the 6 to 8, you start at 6, you're ending.
Yeah,
there's no-
I agree
okay,
with
just
Mark.
starting at
You
6,
start
yes,
at
good
6.
point.
Okay, so we'll continue with our noon on the first Wednesday of the month, 6 on the following Wednesdays of the month, taking a break as we see fit.
Yeah,
And-
budgeting, et cetera.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is early voting hours for the state primary election, which is item number 17. You should note that I did request to contact council in time-sensitive manner, because as I listed in the request, we were in the middle of early voting period earlier this week, yesterday, when questions arose about our early voting hours and specifically new requirements of the law that require, let's see here. I wrote early voting this is Mass General Law. Early voting in person shall be conducted on weekend dates during the early voting period as follows: for municipalities with less than 5,000 registered voters for not less than 4 hours each weekend. So Monterey did not hold the required 4 hours that we should have held last weekend. I'm just gonna go through each delinquency.
Yeah, that's good. Could Gary be that person, or does it have to be the certified clerk?
I'm not familiar.
Okay.
To be the person who does the early voting?
Yeah.
I don't know either, but I will.
So, Melissa, can you find that out for us?
For each other day during the early voting period, early voting in person shall be conducted as follows: for municipalities with less than 5,000 registered voters, the city council or a city or board of selectmen or select board of a town may, at a public meeting held not less than 20 days before the first day of the early voting period, vote to provide early voting hours of not less than 25% of the usual business hours of the town clerk. So we fell delinquent in that requirement because the select board did not vote to provide early voting hours 20 days before the election.
So what were you quoting here?
Mass General Law.
Right, but, so you got it, what, that's
Chapter
25B.
64, section
Okay.
25B. And then each city and town shall establish an early voting site that shall include the local election office for the city or town. We did not do that. And then the designation of an early voting site shall be made not less than 14 days prior to the beginning of the early voting period established in this section. Not less than 5 business days prior to the beginning of the early voting period, and at least once during the early voting period, the registrars for each city and town shall publish notice of the location of the early voting sites as well as the applicable dates and hours. That was not done in Monterey for this state primary election. So I reached out to Donna Tuesday morning and said, it has come to my attention that these are the new requirements of the law, and we were delinquent in a number of categories by not holding hours, by not designating a place, by not designating hours. And what we have done is post early voting hours for Thursday, September 1st, 4:30 to 8:30 p.m., Friday, September 2nd from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. But we are removing the Saturday hours because Saturday is too close to the election, because you can't hold early voting 4 days before an election. So what's happened is the state changed the law, and there's a lot more on the select board's plate and a lot more requirements of early voting hours for the town clerk and the registrars, and we dropped the ball. And Donna responded with the requirements for the general election in November, so we need to be certain that we fulfill these. So no later than October 2nd, the select board needs to determine the hours for early voting. They must be at least 4 hours during the weekend of October 29th to 30th. Due to Monterey's size, no other early voting hours are required to be set. Although I thought it was 25% of the usual business
Yeah,
hours.
which I think
for
would be
town clerk.
5 hours, so.
No, but the 4 hours on the weekend.
Satisfied.
Mandatory.
Yeah, so that satisfies.
But we have to have
You don't have,
25% of the total
No,
votes
no.
office hours.
you have to have 4 hours. on-
Yes,
on-
I agree,
on
Don.
Saturday.
Yeah.
The other days, you don't have to give it all if you're under 5,000.
I read it
It says
for
May.
municipalities with less than 5,000, yeah, there's a May.
It's a May.
Yeah.
So you
Okay.
can give additional early
Right.
voting dates, but it costs money and the state wanted to give the option.
Right, yeah.
But can I just clarify one thing, Justin? Did the attorney specifically say that we couldn't?
I'm gonna get there, well, no, actually, the attorney said in her response, you are correct, there cannot be early voting on September 3rd.
Okay, right now it's on the,
No, I took it off.
It's down.
For the Saturday,
Yes,
I took it off.
it would be
After Donna said we couldn't.
illegal to hold hours on that day. So back to the requirements for November, and then we can follow up with any other questions. So we need to do that by October 2nd, the select board does, so we gotta put that on the agenda for 4 weekend hours. No later than October 8th, the select board designates the location for early voting if town hall is unsuitable for early voting, then another central location must be designated. No later than October 17th, the board of registrars publishes the notice of the location, dates, and hours of early voting. The notice must be posted in the town clerk's office, on the official bulletin board of the town, other public buildings chosen by the registrars, on the town's website, and submitted to the election division for posting on the secretary of the Commonwealth's website. So the select board, I don't know what it was like when you were on board, Scott, and even from last year, I guess we didn't really hold any elections, but this new law, or the change in the law, place a lot on the select board to designate hours and locations that was not previously done.
Coverage and everything. The confusing
I
thing
believe
to
we used to just let the clerk pretty much dictate that.
But the new law that the
Yeah.
Votes Act actually
Well,
puts
that
it
was
on
the
us.
difference,
The
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the confusion to me is that I have this rather lengthy missive that was sent by the Commonwealth Elections Division to election officials that Terry sent me, that is really clear and direct about all the responsibilities, and the only thing this thing mentions that the select board is responsible for, is that, where is it? Sorry, I'm trying to go down the page. Nothing in here mentions anything about the select board having responsibilities, except in order to limit your early voting hours, your board of selectmen, city council, or town council will need to vote to do so in a public meeting. That's the only responsibility specifically mentioned in the missive to election officials regarding select board. And the police presence. Those two things are mentioned in here. All of these other duties are apparently up to the board of registrars.
Well, this is mass
I
general law.
know, but
and
that's
town
confusing
council.
to me. Why would the Secretary of State tell the election officials that it's on them if the law says otherwise?
Well, let's see, we can't get clarification.
But
Yeah,
not that I'm unwilling
yeah.
to do it, it's easy to do, that's kind of not my point, it's, like, I feel bad if it was our responsibility that we dropped the ball, I mean, it is a new law, but it's not clear to me how we would have been informed. Or, you have to be aware that it's your responsibility, and if the only missive that went out about that law was to the registrar voters, and that didn't actually say that it was on the select boards.
Which is what you just read.
Correct. Then they wouldn't have told us. How would we be aware?
Well, we are now, right?
We are now.
Let's go forward.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't like, I think it doesn't make any sense to have the select board make all these decisions, but we have the dates now. We're aware for the general election in November, and we were delinquent for the state primary, and like I said, I asked Donna, what can we do to remedy it, and she said, what you have done now is the best that you can do.
Is there any reason we can't vote right this minute?
I would, but we haven't posted it. We could put on the next, I'll put on the next agenda.
Is that anything that we discussed, or is that just a stamp?
I think we have to
Timeframe.
like, do we want there to be more than 4 hours on Saturday? Do we want early voting to be available all of the clerk's hours?
That's what I
Those
was
would be,
about to say,
those would be questions.
is that discussion that we try to have with Terry? Or is this dictation, we tell her what it is and?
Well, I think it's like any time, right? We could seek input. Is town hall a good place to have early voting? I think so, but the new law leaves us up to decide if we don't want town hall to be the voting place. Of course, any early voting place would need to be accessible. Don Coburn.
Yes, thank you. It's on the agenda, early voting hours, it's on the agenda.
Yes. It is,
I
for
think-
state primary
For
election.
state primary, and this would be for the actual
No,
state
no,
election.
I'm talking about the state primary.
There's nothing we
This-
can do to modify existing situations, this is for this week only.
There has been no vote by the select board setting the two dates that presently exist, Monday and Tuesday, or
Thursday.
Thursday, Friday.
Thursday and Friday. So I'm just asking that the select board consider voting that early hours occur on those days and those times.
I think that's fair.
That, it is fair, but do we have somebody who can do the job?
Yes,
Yes.
those are her standing hours.
Oh, awesome, great.
I would move that the town of Monterey hold early voting hours for the state primary election in the town hall on Thursday, September 1st from 4:30 PM to 8:30 PM, and Friday, September 2nd from 12 PM to 8 PM.
Second.
Any other discussion or public comment on the motion? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan votes
Yes.
Scott,
Yes,
Justin, yes, and the motion carries. That's our early voting hours for the state primary election. And we will comply with the law more fully in the next election.
as we know it.
As
we're made aware of it.
So the next item on the agenda is,
Can I make one quick comment on that?
yes, Don
By the
Coburn.
way, I think you might say to council that it would be helpful if when new laws are passed that affect the town, that you let the town know.
I think,
What our responsibilities are.
Yeah, that there's a new law passed, it would be helpful.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, good luck.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Oh, yes.
Great to see you there. Everybody, good night.
Joyful. Drive safely.
18, designate number of officers for primary, so, I believe it's the select board's responsibility to designate a number of officers for elections in town hall, and I would move that we designate one officer for the state primary election on Tuesday, September 6th.
Can't I do both elections at the same time?
I don't see why not, that would give them more time.
I will amend my motion to designate one officer for the state primary election on Tuesday, September 6th at town hall. What is the date of the other election?
November 8th, Tuesday.
And one officer for the state election on Tuesday, November 8th,
I just looked it up tonight, so I don't know.
both at town hall.
Second.
Is there any other discussion or comment on the police officers?
Yes, so Donna had previously sent us, information regarding pay rate and, duty officers. And I did have a subsequent conversation, with Garrett and, Brian. It occurred to me, reading her missive, that it looked like it applied mostly to towns that are substantially larger and may have multiple officers on duty at any one time. Because if we were to follow her recommendation that it be the officer on duty, there would be no officer available to take calls.
Right.
So, there doesn't seem to be, in fact, when I came in to vote for the special election, there was a call. And the police was running out to go to the call. So, I'm concerned how, like, it appears to me that we may be in a position where we have to pay detail rate. Because we only have one duty officer at a time. So either we ask 2 officers to be on duty and there's gonna be a blank space somewhere else, right, we have time with no coverage, or we pay a detail rate. I don't really see another option unless we're asking someone to work that many additional hours.
Isn't that funding supposed to come from the clerk's election fund?
But we still have, but it still has to be paid, right? So whether it's coming from that fund or that fund, it's still coming out of the town coffers.
So are
It's
you,
just a question
are you
of which
concerned
one.
with what the rate is? Pay rate?
Donna suggested that the officer who was presiding over elections, who was the president of the elections, could be an officer who is regularly scheduled. Simply for that, to avoid the higher rate.
Yeah.
But it's a little different in Monterey with one officer on duty at a time.
Correct, but Melissa, didn't we always have an officer that was, on the rate, detail rate? As a second officer, and that's what his job was for the day.
Right.
So.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
So Scott missed the history of the clerk had asked them to set a lower rate, and when we asked Donna, I think her answer was more geared toward towns that have multiple officers on a shift, where they could have just assigned, like Sheffield has 3 officers on, one of them just goes and works
Yeah,
the election.
for his shift.
For his shift, right.
So with this instance where we only have
One officer on.
one,
We need a second one. So
and
we
it
have to
should-
pay detail rate. And we have investigated that we cannot have more than one detail rate. Your
It's
detail rate is
state
your
set.
detail rate, it's not state set, but you're not allowed to have different detail rates, so you can't have like an internal detail rate and an external detail rate. You have to pay everyone the
Is
detail
it
rate.
still 45 an hour?
Yeah, it's 45 now.
Well, is that something that we're trying to move and agree with? That that's how we wanna plan this?
I think it's not, we just need to designate the number of officers. We could ask that not paying detail rate be looked into, but we don't need to. We can, all that we need to do is designate the number of officers, which is.
And I was not suggesting.
The motion on
lower
the floor is
detail
for
rate.
one, because we need at least one.
At the election?
Yes.
Correct.
Correct, and whether or not it's a regular shift officer or a detail officer is not part of this.
No, it's not part of my motion.
Right.
Another motion we made,
But it must eventually come up.
Yes.
yes,
Alright.
it could be,
I got
I mean,
you, I
the
got
chief of police can use his
Discretion.
discretion. If we wanted to give guidance on that, we possibly could.
Mhm.
I think we're learning that maybe the way we've done it in Monterey is the way that makes sense.
Sure, because we always knew how many elections there were every year, and that was put in, that detail rate, I believe, was always added into police.
We just didn't know this year.
Yeah.
There was one extra.
Okay, so it's not that much, I mean, how many hours is it? 8?
Oh, well, was it 8 for the special? I think it was 8.
Alright, I'm gonna call a vote on the
Yeah.
motion to designate one officer for the state primary election and one officer for the state election.
Approved. Second, I mean.
Yes, alright, we got a seconded motion, we're gonna call a vote, Scott votes.
Yes.
And Susan votes.
Yes.
And Justin votes yes, and we have designated one officer for each of those 2 elections.
Yep.
Okay, we have made it through new business. Against all odds.
You're all done now.
No, the next item on our agenda, or the next section is correspondence, minutes, and public comment. We have mail and correspondence. We dealt with the email from Virgil Stucker. We're going to delay the email from Steve Moore.
Good luck.
Oh, thank you. All right.
we're gonna delay the email from Steve Moore until next week about, writing in the select board corner unless there's any opposition to that.
No.
Next thing we have is approving minutes. August 13th, August 16th, and August 7th.
I did give it to you, Scott, and they only include your
Yeah.
changes, Justin.
Okay.
I'm gonna take this opportunity to see Don.
There's one other email that isn't on here, but that you sent I received an email that was a correspondence between you and Terry concerning a number of things, including the time clock and the IT issue.
Yes.
And can we include that, or, because it is a correspondence that I received, even though it's not
Yeah.
on here?
Can we add it to the agenda for next week? And we may even have the clerk present,
Sure.
if we wanna request the clerk's
Feedback on?
presence. Yeah, I mean, one thing that happens, which I don't like, is, well, yeah, no, why don't, if that's, works for you, why don't we, put that on the agenda for next week?
Okay.
And just focus on the minutes. So 8/13 was second homeowners meeting.
Yep.
Do we have I think I drafted them, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did, and I literally have only one change.
Yeah.
Which was this.
Summarize, who's called?
You said summarized her recommendations, and
Yeah.
I summarized Department of Fisheries and Wildlife recommendations.
Yeah.
That's it.
And, reuse, recycling. Okay. Just those two changes.
Yep.
I would, yes, Melissa?
Can you just tell me where it is so I can make them?
Yep. So the first one is, under transfer station, number 5.
Yeah.
It shouldn't say mattress reuse, it should say mattress recycling. No one's reusing somebody else's used mattresses. And under bear guidance, number 6, it should read Susan summarized Department of Fisheries and Wildlife recommendations. So they weren't just ones I made up out of thin air. And I think all of these are just the two of us, right? Because
Just the two.
Scott wasn't there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the only changes are Justin's on all copies.
I also want to add, not being at a meeting doesn't prevent you from
Oh,
approving
okay.
meeting minutes,
I
but it
didn't
does.
realize it when I forgot.
Well, but typically, we've always recused ourselves if we weren't present.
Right.
I think
That's fine.
as long as we can get them approved one way or another,
Alright,
and we
so,
agree as a board. So I would motion to approve the minutes of August 13th, 2022 as amended by Susan.
second,
I'll call a vote on that motion.
yes?
Susan votes yes, Justin votes yes, motion carries, minutes approved. The next is 8/16/22, which was a joint meeting with the select board and finance committee.
I think I had nothing on that one.
I think the biggest substantive change I had was just about the trees, and so it mentioned the community center property and the Bidwell Park property, and I just wanted to be very clear about the difference between them, because people
Where are
have,
you on here?
1A,
1A.
8/16.
What?
16.
Oh, 16, sorry.
I'll read what I wrote, because it relates. All of the emergency work to open roadways and clean up down trees on the community center property has been completed. Bidwell Park is currently closed to the public and is going to require approximately 25/6 to clean up based on contract rates and estimates from John W. Field Tree Service. The community center property has been cleaned up of down trees and limbs. However, the trunks of trees that the top snapped off on are still standing and should be removed. Furthermore, the director of operations and the tree warden are recommending the removal of 20+ tall white pines at the community center property along the Marlborough Road and Main Road. These trees are being considered for removal because their integrity is reduced by the recent falling neighboring trees and their age. In the last few years, these trees continue to snap off and fall during major weather events. The estimate for all of the work at the community center property clean up the snapped off trunks and remove the 20+ tall white pines along New Marlboro Road and Main Road is approximately $25,600.
Okay. That sounds reasonable.
And then I just added that the bills that were not paid must be paid for at a town meeting, because there's no other way to pay them.
Right.
I just clarified replacing any stabilization funds we were to spend at the next annual town meeting. Do any other changes?
I didn't have any other changes.
I would move to approve the minutes of August 16th, 2022 as amended.
Second,
Call a vote, Susan votes.
Yes.
Justin, yes. Scott is probably abstaining.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott's abstaining, so those minutes are approved 2-0. We can sign, we can initial a copy. So now we'll work on August 17th, 2022.
so, I do not have a lot. The most substantive one I have is under 7, that it should read, and not the town administrator to avoid any real or perceived conflict.
Okay. Do you want to go with my copy?
Sure. Real or perceived.
Yeah, we can show that.
I also corrected the art constant, but yeah, you did the same thing. What else?
I said that Melissa and Justin both agreed to sign the agreement and attach it as a document used at the meeting. Very good. 16. And the board will make a decision on the possible release of the executive session minutes at a future meeting.
Under 13, I corrected real to very. It's stupid, but it doesn't. Okay. Okay. So that covers everything.
Alright, I'd motion to approve the minutes of 8/17/2022 as amended.
Second,
Call a vote, Susan.
yes.
Justin, yes. Motion carries, minutes are approved, and that catches us up to date on minutes, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. You wanna just initial that?
You bet.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is comments and questions from the public. There being none,
No public left. We winnowed them
we don't
out.
have anything there. The last item on our agenda is something we agreed to come back to, which is the response to the town clerk's office hour proposal.
Before we go into executive session, we are meeting next week at noon. Per
It's the
our,
first Monday.
it's the
Yes.
first Monday, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
confirm that, okay.
And here's the other thing is, I think that we legally can go into executive session, but I don't know that we need to, or it would be beneficial to edit this letter. I think that we can probably do it in open session, and the letter itself is ultimately a public.
It is
record.
now, because it's sitting on our desk.
So I would move that we actually edit this letter in open meeting and not go into
I'm fine
executive
with
session.
I don't think there's anything problematic there.
Is there a second on that motion?
Yes. I second
Any
that motion.
discussion? Call a vote.
No, I think you're correct in that assumption.
We'll call a vote to deal with this in open session. So Scott votes,
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And Justin, yes. I do have a couple changes right off the bat. So we revised our sexual harassment policy, if I'm not mistaken. I just wanna add that word in there.
Did we not cover harassment as well as sexual harassment? I thought we did both.
Just sexual harassment.
Okay.
I think
You feel like the word "we" needs to be in there rather than just,
No, he wanted with sexual rather than just harassment.
okay, gotcha.
Because,
That's the term you're using, okay.
yeah,
No, well, there's harassment and there's sexual harassment, so.
okay, and I think Yeah, it's just two different, I just wanna be clear.
Well, should it be, if there's two different harassments,
But apparently we only revised the sexual harassment policy.
the other harassment's good to go?
I
No,
think that's actually one that you have, isn't it?
What did
We have a current harassment policy in our handbook.
yes, we haven't reviewed it. I just wanted to be clear that Susan was writing changes that we have made in the
Right.
past couple months, and we revised our sexual harassment policy. I just didn't want any confusion
Okay.
on what was done.
If that's what you've done, that's what you've done.
I think that putting a revision of the regular harassment policy, I think the only thing we really need to fix there is how it goes forward once the complaint's been made, and we could probably model it right on the sexual one. But,
For later.
yes,
for
but
this
it wouldn't
letter.
be on this letter.
Right.
I would also delete future from the last sentence, so that paragraph, we feel that these measures were adequate to deal with problems should they.
Yeah,
Should
that's
they
fine.
arise? So with future is gone.
Yep.
Strike that.
No,
To
just
deal
strike,
with problems should they arise.
just strike future.
Yep.
And Melissa. I was going through my bag. 2016 Cliff Bar.
But do you still have my little thing that I made for you that says
Relax.
breathe or relax?
I don't know where it is. I have the left down.
I would delete two things.
Mhm.
Which is that the weekend early voting hours, I don't think is, I mean, it's gonna be one time in the next long
In
time.
this year.
So I would just say the Saturday hours will ensure availability to
We can
all,
say
to all residents.
Okay. Alright.
Okay, henceforth, is that still in there?
No, I would just rewrite that sentence to the Saturday hours will ensure availability to all residents. And then I would delete the next paragraph
We have
entirely.
this in the survey of 13 southern region towns.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary,
Good.
it's just.
Yeah. I mean, the less there is for her to chew on, the better.
Yeah, it's just that she's been very insistent on evening hours, and I just wanted to be on record as saying that like it's unusual.
Yeah, and, but frankly, I think evening hours are good. And this offers some evening hours and I like that. So I just don't think it's necessary to say.
Okay. I'm okay with you, Jason. You got any further ones?
All good?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry, I didn't.
the only
No,
change,
okay.
just to clarify, the changes I made from the clean copy we had is add sexual in front of harassment policy in the
Yeah,
first paragraph. Delete future from the
Yeah,
last sentence of the
that's
first paragraph. Rewrite the last sentence of the paragraph beginning the Wednesday hours to the Saturday hours will ensure availability to all residents. And delete that next paragraph that begins with we note that.
With the, yeah, and the required early voting hours is gone too.
you changed the font size. I was like, what's going on?
I did, cause I.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just trying to figure out why they did, why I was like, were other things on it?
Well, not that they deleted, I can get it.
No, it's fine.
Maybe they're not unpaid.
The other last changes,
Mm.
second sentence, first paragraph, I would write your current hours were always deemed temporary by the board, and this has been made clear previously.
Is there a big
Strike
difference on
that whole
numerous
thing.
occasions versus previously?
I don't think we need to hold ourselves
It
to
just
the
makes it
bar.
bigger.
Well, no, but I mean, we don't need, it's just been made clear previously.
Okay.
And just go right to while we understand your
No, it
concerns.
would read, and this has been made clear previously, period.
Mhm.
Instead of on numerous occasions,
Yeah.
it would read previously. That's what you're saying, right?
I just don't know, I don't wanna,
No,
say-
So
we don't have to.
Can you reread that then?
yeah, your current hours were always deemed temporary by the board, and this has been made clear previously.
Previously been made clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
this has previously been made clear. That can, we'll go with Scott's. And delete on numerous occasions.
Is that good?
Yes, I'm good with that.
You could get Trenton home. Walking back and forth. Exhausting. But done, yay.
Yeah.
Just like one this time. This is not.
I would motion to approve this letter to the town clerk from the select board, regarding the clerk's hours going forward.
The requested hours. Going forward. Sure.
Yeah.
I second that motion.
Any other discussion on that? That mean, we'll call a vote. Susan votes.
Yes.
Scott
Yes.
and Justin, yes. And I will motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Susan will vote on the motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Susan votes yes. Scott?
Yes.
Justin, yes. Meeting adjourned at 8:31 PM.
You guys vote on